It's that time of year again. Joe and I are going to rank our top 30 prospects in the Mariners farm system, who we think is the best prospect, and where we rank some of the newer guys to the system as well. We're going to go over all 30 in today's episode of the Hit It Here podcast. It's part of the Bleav Network, and this is the David Woodside episode of the podcast. Shout out to David. He just gave us $50 for the GoFundMe that we are running to help us while we are down in spring training. We are like 27 or 28% of the way to our goal. So thank you, David, for donating. And I am here with a friend of David, Joseph. How are you?
I am great, man. Shout out, David. We just got lunch the other day, catching up a little bit, and I was talking about how I'm going to have to shave my head and everything. And he was appalled at my willingness to do something as maybe extreme's not the right word, but David went the extra mile here and sent us a very kind donation. So I appreciate that, David. I really, really do. You don't make the top 30. You're too old, unfortunately. And there's some guys on this top 30, Colton, that you were trying to fight for, and there's one in particular that just I couldn't allow on the age principle alone. And that would be Nick Dunn. Originally on Colton's list, but I kind of talked him off that ledge. A 28-year-old, listen, the oldest prospect on any list across all MLB pipeline was two 27-year-olds on the Athletics list from 2024. I told Colton, if I can find a 28-year-old across the entire MLB on a top 30 from 2024, I would allow Nick Dunn. But luckily for us and you guys, I did not. I understand that he's still technically prospect eligible as far as like the definition is concerned, but as a guy who's been in the league since 2018, I feel like his time in the Sun's kind of, that ship has sailed, right? That ship has sailed, in my opinion.
I'm still not happy about it, just so we're clear.
Are you more upset about that one or the Rylan Thomas omission?
Oh, I'm more upset about Nick Dunn.
Interesting.
I think there is a real world where Nick Dunn plays for the Seattle Mariners this year and is just Ryan Bliss.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, I mean, in 2024 in AAA in 98 games, he hit 316, 374, 468 with an 842 OPS. That's solid. He hit 8 home runs. He struck out 33 times, walked 30 times. Only stole one bag while he was at AAA, but yeah, very good player. He's a guy who is, 28? Yeah, just turned 28 years old. Second baseman, third baseman, in my opinion. There's a really good chance that he does make the big league roster at some point if there is an injury of some kind. Rylan Thomas, who the Mariners got in a trade with the New York Mets for Ryan Stanek, came over in that trade. He hit, over the year, between 3 different teams, he hit 287, 336, 382 with a 718 OPS. Not a lot of slug there with the Mariners specifically. He hit 322, 365, 373. Good for a 738 OPS. Struck out 12 times, walked 13, and stole 10 bags in 196 plate appearances. Another guy who I think has a good chance if there's an injury or the Mariners need to bring someone up, Rylan Thomas is a guy who I think has a good chance to be that guy. I think he's just better Cade Marlowe, in my opinion. And yeah, doesn't make the list here. Joe labeled these as Colton's old guys.
I did.
So
I don't know how old Rylan Thomas is, but I assume he's probably like 24.
He is 20. He'll be 25 at the beginning of April.
So a little bit on the older side for prospects are concerned. And I think like similarly to like a Nick Dunn, even a Cade Marlowe, a Spencer Packard. They're guys that are being left off the list because they've spent enough time in the prospect system in the minor leagues to be evaluated. And like, you kind of know where they're going to be, and ranking them in a top 30 is almost like a moot point. Like, do we need to have Nick Dunn in the top 30? I don't think so. I really don't think so. Like, I don't know, man. I just like, that's my thought process around how to, I guess, like evaluate prospects in the minor leagues. And once they reach a certain age limit, aka they're close enough to my age where maybe we went to high school together and maybe we had the same graduating class, they're too old to be on a prospect list. But Colton's ideology around it is like, if they can make some sort of legitimate impact on the big league club, they should be considered. And I don't necessarily disagree with that sentiment. That's why he wanted Nick Dunn and Ryland Thomas, why he pined for them. But I also had someone left off the list, which was Brock Moore, which Colton labeled ass, because Brock Moore was not good in his eyes. And I understand, or his time at Oregon was not good. His 1 inning in Modesto last year, he struck 2 batters out, but he also walked 2 batters. Like, the big thing with Brock Moore is, can he get the control dialed in? I think there's a chance that there's legitimate stuff that he can be next year's Logan Evans, where he will shoot up prospect boards and crack his way into plenty of people's top 30s. Maybe even ours at the midseason ranking. But Colton does not have as much faith, not nearly as much faith as the first guy on our top 30, an old man that I did allow to be on this list, which is Travis Kuhn. We'll let you talk about him here in a second, Colton. You've liked Travis Kuhn, I think, ever since we started doing this channel. I think like he's been like a guy on your big board for a minute. Up next, we have Cole Phillips. He's a guy that we got in the Atlanta Braves trade with Jared Kelenic and all that stuff. Just injuries have really derailed his career. He's kind of like hanging on by a thread, I think, as far as where he can still find himself into a top 30. He probably could be left off, and I wouldn't bat an eye, but that's neither here nor there. He's going to be 22 this year. Carlos Jimenez is up next at 28, outfielder, finished last year at Modesto. He will be 22, like throughout at some point during this season. 27, we have Grant Knipp, the two-way player, catcher, guy that throws 100, so maybe he's a reliever as well. It's an interesting kind of caveat with Grant Knipp, drafted last year. Is he going to catch? Is he just going to DH? Will he pitch? I think watching him develop will be interesting. He's going to be 23. And then Jared Sundstrom finished last year at Everett, outfielder. He's going to be 24. He'll probably start in Arkansas. I know the Locked On guys kind of said, like, Sundstrom, this is kind of like his last chance to really, like, make an impact, find his way into, like, a fourth outfielder, quad A type role, potentially. But Sundstrom still finds his way into our top 30 here. But Colton, the floor is yours to talk about Travis Kuhn.
Travis Kuhn will pitch for the Seattle Mariners this year. He, in 2024 in Arkansas, he had a 3.33 ERA in 44 games. He pitched 54 innings. In the past 3 years, he has thrown 54 innings or more every single year with pretty much the same looking slash line for all of it. And I think he's consistent. He's a guy that, again, down in Arkansas, the numbers aren't like incredible. Like, they're not going to blow you out of the water, but he is consistent. Now, he did have a bit of a hiccup in 2023. His strikeout rate, or strikeouts per nine, dropped to 8.4, down from his career 10.4 in the minors. But he's a guy that I think has a really good chance, even at the age of 27 this year, to. We know how often, like, players in the bullpen either get hurt or don't perform or what have you. I think Travis Kuhn is one of those guys that's going to get called up mid-season and might shock a lot of people. He has really good stuff. You follow him on Instagram. He's a really fun guy as well. Great mustache. Stellar mustache. And I think that, yeah, he's a guy that the Mariners system, if they can, just keep molding him, he's a little on the older side, like Joe mentioned, but I think he's a guy that has a really good chance to be a part of this team in 2025.
What puts him ahead of a guy saying maybe like Peyton Alford?
Besides personal bias, I think that Travis Kuhn, like I said, it's consistency with him. I think Alford has a good chance as well, personally. I think Alford, is he going to be in AAA this year? He might be.
Maybe.
I think there's a decent chance that Peyton Alford could be in AAA this year with the Tacoma Rainiers. And I don't know, left-hander. I think there's a good chance that he could be there as well. But I don't know. I've liked Travis Kuhn for a long time, so I fought for him to be on this list.
Yeah, you did, and you're getting your just desserts right now. And I happy for you, happy for his mustache. But we have to move on inside further into the top, the top 25 here. Ashton Izzy, starting pitcher, A-ball. I think that was his. He repeated Modesto last year. He'll be 21 this year. My guy up next, 24, Jeter Martinez. I have wanted him to be exactly who he was in 2023. He wasn't. He was pretty bad in the ACL last year. He'll be 19. He's still very young, still a lot of potential there. I think there's a good makeup there, a good build for a prototypical like arm. It's just, can he not walk guys? That's the big issue with a lot of these young arms is, will they be able to stop walking guys? Will they be able to get outs? I think that's why you see like a guy like Walter Ford fall off this list. back-to-back years, like, and not be able to like kind of like reclaim his spot within the top 30. It's not that they're not valuable in some sense, like there's still like a potential that they can grow into a legit arm, but Gino Martinez does fall out of the top 20 here. I think he was 17 on pipelines, and he was probably somewhere for us like that last year as well. Up next, we have Brock Rodden, Gold Glover, infielder, Arkansas. A good guy, a good dude. Brock Rodden, when he got, oh my God. When I was there at the Modesto like California League Championship, and the announcer was like, oh, he would get jazzed over saying Brock Rodden's name, and it was amazing. But did not hit super well when he got to Arkansas last year. It's a tough park to hit in. Everyone knows that, but will he be able to kind of, I guess, show his offensive worth? Because he wasn't bad when he was with Modesto or Everett, but did seem a little bit more overmatched once he got into Double-A, which I think makes sense. It's going to be the best pitching that he'll see in the Texas League versus like the PCL. Like if he ends up in Tacoma, his numbers will probably be better than they were ever in the Texas League. But next we have DeWalt Joseph, international signing from the previous year. He'll be 18. He played the entirety of his season last year in the DSL. Or did he make the complex league at all, or it was just the DSL?
I think it was just the DSL.
Because he was so bad that they didn't want to give him at bats in the complex league. He hit like what, 133, you said?
133.
Yeah. Just for a guy that was a top 50 international prospect, not something that you wanted to see. But again, same thing. He's young. He's 18. So he'll have plenty of room to grow. And then we have Kendry Martinez, recently international signing. Similar vibe to DeWalt Joseph. Shortstop. He's obviously hasn't played in the Mariners organization. Will he next year? I mean, maybe Dominican Summer League is like similar vibe, like to DeWalt Joseph. You just have to hope he hits better than 133. I think there's probably a good chance based on like the skill set that we've heard from Kendry Martinez about how it's a smooth contact first bat, kind of can spray the ball over the field, but it's a contact first situation and it's a smooth swing. I have relatively decent faith that he could be a better hitter than 133, but anyone in that 25 to 21 range that you'd like to talk about, Colton?
No, I mean, you mentioned it. It's a lot of young guys with Martinez, Joseph, and Jeter Martinez, Kendry Martinez, yeah, and DeWalt Joseph. Yeah, they're all young, 19, 18, 17 years old. I mean, Jeter Martinez, God, that's going to be annoying.
Yeah.
He just turned 19, and like you said, it wasn't terrible last year. It really was just his walks. He had his whip went from a .787 up to a 1.538 in 2024. He walked 31 hitters in 39 innings. That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
That's really bad. And the strikeout stuff was still there. He actually was better this year. 11.1 strikeouts per 9 in 2024 compared to the 10.5 in 2023. But with that came him not being able to find the zone as much either. So the stuff is there for Jeter Martinez. It's just, can he find the strike zone? DeWalt Joseph, I mean, whatever. Hit 133. This year's really the test for him. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that, last year, your first taste of professional ball, whatever. However you do, whatever. But in 2025, it's going to be his first real taste of professional ball, and we'll see how he turns out. And Kendry Martinez is a guy that I'm excited about. I think that the Mariners have a really good crop of talented young shortstops in their organization, and Kendry Martinez just adds to that list.
Mm-hmm. Not a talented young shortstop. Maybe back in his high school days, maybe little league days. If you're a pitcher at this level of your career, you probably played shortstop at one point. Tyler Guff is our 20th ranked prospect here. Right-handed pitcher, finished last year in Modesto. I imagine he'll probably go to Everett, but because he was in Modesto in 2023 as well. He'll be 22 for the majority of the year. 19, we have Teddy McGraw. A similar situation to Cole Phillips, where dude just can't stay healthy. The stuff is legit. We know it's there. I think, ranked within the top 15 previous to this. I think he was 14th. So he's down here at 19. He'll be 23. Can he stay healthy? If he can, amazing. You'll be able to see that stuff come through on the diamond. But until then, it's kind of hard to rank these guys on what they could be. I guess that's all prospects are. But when injuries are the big caveat, I think it changes the conversation. 18, we have 2024 draftee Josh Caron, catcher. Good catching depth in the prospect system, and this is an exciting guy as well. He played a little bit in Modesto last year, right?
Yeah.
No. Maybe.
Modesto, yeah, he did. He played 13 games in Modesto.
Okay, fantastic. Great news. It's a catcher prospect. It's a guy that has a lot of power. I mean, listen. if this is like another timetable thing with catchers graduating and service time kind of figuring itself out, whether or not Harry Ford sticks at catcher, like having Josh Caron be a guy that you drafted last year, already kind of creeping towards top 15 range, and the exciting stuff that he showed in college, what he showed him at, like, this is a legit guy in the prospect system that even though it's only like at 18, he's going to be 22. Like, this is a guy to kind of keep tabs on. A lot of the 2024 draftees, I think, will show through that there's some legit talent there. 17, co-pitcher of the year in the Mariners minor league system, Michael Morales here. A little bit of a fall from grace, maybe just like not really like living up to the hype as some of his other counterparts in the system. He's going to be 23. He finished last year in Arkansas. I imagine he'll be there again. I don't see why they'd move him up to Tacoma, because like Tacoma's not really the place where their better pitching prospects go. We all know how that kind of usually is facilitated. And at 16 here, another 2024 draftee out of Kansas, Hunter Cranton, right-handed pitcher. He's going to be a reliever. He pitched a little bit of Modesto. He's going to be 24. He's on the older side as far as a 2024 draftee is concerned, but there's legitimate talent. There's legitimate upside that he, similar to maybe Travis Kuhn, will pitch for the Mariners in 2025. There's a lot of hype around a lot of these guys, I think, in this 20 to 16 range, and it's not even like within the top 15. There's a lot to like about this group. Who would you like to kind of elaborate a little bit more on?
I mean, I think the guy you finished with, Hunter Cranton, I think that he does play a role in this bullpen this year. At the latest, at the beginning of 2026, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
He was a senior sign out of Kansas, like you said, in just 8 1/3 in 2024 for the Mariners in Modesto. He had a 3.24 ERA. Again, the walks were a bit of a problem, but it was only 4 walks in 8 innings. Like, it's a very small sample size. He did strike out 14 hitters in 8 1/3. That is a 15 good for a 15.1 strikeouts per 9 in 2024. Hunter Cranton, he's a guy who will move quickly through the organization because he's older. He was, like I said, a senior sign. He's a guy that I think legitimately there's an outside chance, but I think there's a legitimate chance that he breaks camp this season. I think that it's certainly possible.
If he really shows up and shows out.
Right. Now, it would take a lot of things to happen for that to actually go down. A lot of guys either just not performing, because Cranton obviously has options. They have no reason to rush him.
Mm-hmm.
But there is an outside chance that, I mean, he's to that point. He's good enough, in my opinion, to pitch in the big leagues right now. It's just a matter of, will they have a roster spot for him? And I highly doubt they will. I hope they don't, personally, because, again, that means a lot of things went wrong. But yeah, I think that Cranton's a guy who has a really good chance to be a part of this team this year. And then you have a couple of guys that we're going to talk about here in the next 5. Now, at 15, we do have Tyler Locklear. We did not rank like Ryan Bliss or Troy Taylor, any of those guys. We are still ranking Locklear. Only had 16 games, I believe it was, at the major league level. So, yeah, we know the story on him. He's 24 years old. Will probably start the year in Tacoma, I would assume, unless he plays really well this spring. At number 14, we have right-handed pitcher Logan Evans, 24 years old. We know the story with Logan Evans as well. They tried transferring him into a reliever, decided to switch that back as well. So I don't really know the story with Logan Evans, how it's going to look in 2025, because I do worry about his development going through having to become a reliever and then switching back to a starting pitcher. But we'll see. I mean, he's had, an offseason to figure it out at this point. 13, we have Brandon Garcia, left-handed pitcher. He's 25, also down in Double-A. He's a guy that I think makes the opening day roster as a reliever. We've talked about it during the offseason. I think it was mentioned by, it was either Dipoto or Hollander, one of the two.
Plenty of times.
Said that there's a good chance that he was going to be on this team as a reliever in 2025. Number 12 here, we have Ben Williamson, third baseman, 24 years old, also at Double-A. I don't know if you guys have seen, some of the batting practices and stuff down in Peoria, but he has been hitting frozen ropes all over the field. He's a big doubles guy. Obviously, in Dickey Stevens ballpark, it's a pretty good doubles ballpark, but interested to see him at AAA this year, see how he does in Cheney Stadium. And at number 11, we have Yorger Bautista, who was just signed during the international signing period, 17-year-old outfielder known as the Beast. Excited to see what he could do. He didn't play last year, so we haven't really seen much about him. But another guy who, one of the top free agent signings and the international signing period, there's a good chance that he makes it into our top 10 at the middle of the season.
Yeah, like maybe not as highly touted as like a Fallon Celestin as far as like the par for the course for his class, but definitely someone to consider being in the top 15, I think, of many prospect lists without even having seen him in play in an organized ball. Like there is legit talent there. You could just like, whatever organized ball that he is playing, as far as like talent evaluations, scout evaluations, whatever, it's legit. I had him at 10. I had him in the top 10, but there are some other guys that aggregate scores kind of shuffled it around here. Logan Evans is an interesting one. Does lose some headway here to Brandon Garcia, his compatriot down in Arkansas. Garcia pitched half the year in Everett, half the year in Arkansas, was great at both stops. Evans, like you mentioned, a little bit back and forth, wasn't as, I guess, lethal, lights out as Garcia, so I don't hate Garcia being ahead of him. And I think also the chance of him having more of an impact on the Mariners roster in 2025, I think does impact his positioning here. I mean, between 13 and 14, what's the discrepancy? It's basically nothing. They could be, you could flip them any which way you want. It doesn't really matter. It's just kind of like up to your preference. And you mentioned Ben Williamson. You mentioned his ability with the stick. He's known as a glove first third baseman outright anyways. And he's hitting frozen ropes during BP. Didn't do terrible offensively down in Arkansas. It's a matter of like whether or not it continues to translate and continues to grow. That is probably the most interesting player, I think, on this list, realistically. Like there's a legitimate chance that if Polo's hot garbage, Ben Williamson's your third baseman by June. Like if he's hitting well in Tacoma, Ben Williamson could be your third baseman by June, realistically. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing because he has shown that he has the capacity to kind of play, maybe not up to the level, but I see the development process. I see the vision. One guy that I didn't really see the vision for, because I don't think he's got great vision because he strikes out way too much. His MLB The Show card in 2025 is going to have like 40 vision, buddy. Okay, I almost said pal, but I combined both of them. I had Ty Pete ranked 11th or 13th. Colton had him inside his top 10, meaning aggregate scores brought him up to the 10th spot. Our first prospect inside the top 10, Ty Pete, shortstop, part of that elite 2023 draft class. He finished last year in Modesto. I imagine he will probably start in Everett, if I had to guess, just to give some headway to Fallon and Celestin down there in Modesto to start the year, more than likely. He'll be 20, so he's a young kid. He struck out like 160 times. He stole a lot of bags, showed a lot of offensive flair, I think. And that's where a lot of his value kind of comes into play. I had him a little bit lower because the strikeout rate, I hope, does not develop into a worse problem as he continues to level up through the system. But I think a guy that works as hard as he does can fix that. And I'm not mad at seeing him here crack the top 10.
Yeah, like you said, it was 162 strikeouts in 2024, 115 games played. But again, he stole 45 bags. He had 269, 343, 408, 9 triples, 7 home runs, 26 doubles. Like this, he's kind of a freak athlete. I think is a really good way to describe Ty Pete, who, swung and missed quite a bit in 2024. He's young. He has a lot of time to kind of work on that. And so that's why I had him in my top 10. I think I believe in the player a little bit more than you did in this scenario, at least in his ability to cut down on that strikeout rate. But yeah, it is alarming. Like if those numbers stay the same at like a 30% strikeout rate or something like that, that's a huge problem because you can't be coming up to the big leagues having a 30% strikeout rate in the minors. Yeah, because it's going to go up to a 50. So it'll be interesting to see. He's a guy that I'm really interested to watch in 2025 just to see what happens with him if he does go up to Everett. I think that there's a good chance he does because we're going to see some graduations of other guys out of Everett as well. And yeah, I think that when it comes to Ty Pete, he's a guy that we know a lot of teams liked this offseason in trade talks as well. So when we do this re-rank after the trade deadline, there's a chance he's not even here. Yeah. So we won't really know. But overall, I like the profile for Ty Pete. If he could just cut down on the strikeouts, I do think that he has a good chance to be probably. I don't know if he sticks at shortstop, but I think he's athletic enough to play center field
Yeah.
And
With the Mariners like prospect system as it stands, say he stays with the organization, he's not going to be able to play shortstop should everyone around him and in front of him pan out. Like if you look forward to the future, say like 4 years, Cole Young's your second baseman, Fellin's probably your shortstop, and then Colt Emerson's your third baseman. Where's Ty Pete playing? Probably a corner outfield spot. He's not going to first base. Like he's not going to play there. Like his profile doesn't fit that. Maybe it's a DH. Maybe it's like a Christopher Morel type where like, I'm not saying he's as bad defensively, but there's not really a spot for him to fit in. Right. And that's not any like slack on him as like a player, like where he fits necessarily. But again, like you said, he might not be here by midseason when we do these re-ranks. A guy that we'll see a bit more of, and I'm excited to watch him pitch. Spoilers, he's a pitcher at 9. We have D'Angelo Sainja, switch pitcher, drafted last year. Obviously, the Mariners' first-round draft pick in 2024. A very exciting prospect. One that I think will turn a lot of heads. It's a very interesting, nuanced profile because we've never had to evaluate or take a look at, both sides of the mound, I guess. The rubber, sure. I was going to say plate, but that's not right. I know Pat Venditti. Hey,
I was gonna say Pat Venditti was like a word.
Yeah, but like as far as a prospect is concerned, I don't know if necessarily he was ever that legit kind of a situation where like Sainja's. I wouldn't be surprised if people rank him inside the top 5 just because like the potential that's there. It's interesting. It's definitely a situation that we've never really come into and had to kind of take a look at with a more like observant lens. It's kind of like, oh, that's not going to last. They're going to let him try. And that's what I think is exciting. But with that being said, when you can focus on one thing as opposed to having to evaluate and try and develop 2 different things, I think it's easier for guys to maybe shoot ahead of him, like his fellow draftee in 2024, Ryan Sloan, who we ranked a little bit ahead of him here. But there's a guy in between them, Colton. One that there's been some debate about whether or not he's falling out of favor within just evaluators in general. Once the top prospect in the Mariners organization. I had him at 6. You had him at 10. Harry Ford finds himself sandwiched between Ryan Sloan at 7 and D'Angelo Sainja at 9. Harry Ford is our 8th ranked prospect in the Mariners system. Catcher, AA. He's going to be 22. He'll be in Tacoma more than likely. Or maybe not. I don't know. I feel like he's probably in Tacoma.
Yeah, I think he should be in Tacoma. He's a guy that didn't hit for a whole lot of power in 2024, but again, he's playing in Dickey Stevens Ballpark down in Arkansas. Like, it's a hard place to hit. One of the hardest in minor league baseball. So he hit 249, 377, 367 with a 745 OPS. Struck out 115 times, walked 74 times. Did hit 7 home runs, 2 triples, and 26 doubles. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's like, is there prospect fatigue with Harry Ford? I don't know. I personally think there is a little bit. People say he might not stick a catcher. I just completely disagree with that. Like, I think he'll be fine. He's a catcher. Like, and he is good enough to play other positions, but I think he is first and foremost a catcher because that is where his value is. When you have an organization that has Cal Raleigh and Dan Wilson at the helm, he's gonna stay a catcher. The reason his on-base percentage is so high is because he walks a lot.
Yep.
And in 2024, I think that the overwhelming majority of people would say he just wasn't aggressive. And he was just kind of up there watching pitches, which is great. I mean, there's definitely some value to that. But he's not going to reach his full potential if he is not swinging the bat. And that's kind of what we saw from Harry Ford in 2024. He had 107 hits. Like, don't get me wrong, he was still making contact, but a little bit. I mean, every year we have seen his batting average go down. And every year we have, except for 2023, it went up a little bit. That was the fall league. Never mind. Every year we have seen his OBP go down as well. So, yeah, I don't want to say he's heading in the wrong direction.
Sure.
But he is one of the hardest prospects. I think him and Sainja both are the 2 hardest prospects on the Mariners, in the Mariners organization, to rank. Because we don't know what the heck we're doing with Sainja. Like, do we evaluate him as a switch pitcher? We know he's better from the right side. He's probably going to throw more from the right side. How do we evaluate him? Harry Ford, again, who has been in the minors for 4 years now, We saw him on the biggest stage in the WBC, and he looks like he's slowly getting worse. But again, I have to give him some benefit of the doubt. Dickey Stevens Ballpark is a hard place to hit. I think that moving him up to Tacoma, he might be able to hit a little bit better, and at that point, he might be back up these ranks. When we do this re-rank. There's a chance. I mean, there's a chance he plays in the majors this year, but there's also a chance that he is in our top 5 come August. So
yeah, it's always like a moving thing. This is not a, yes, we're making a list, like we're setting it in stone right now, but as these guys play, as these guys develop, things can kind of shift naturally. I mentioned Sloan at 7, obviously drafted last year, a prep arm, a very, as it's been described, a very complete, very fully built out prep arm already at just the age of 18, going to be 19 this coming year. He'll be in Modesto at some point. I mean, there's no reason for him to just stay in like the complex league. I feel like he'll be in Modesto at some point, and that'll be very exciting. He is an arm that will turn heads should he live up to the hype that has been given to him. And I think that's probably the reason why he's ahead of Senja here. I think just as a raw pitching prospect can go, as someone who is already so advanced at just 19, like that's a very good sign for him and what his future looks like in a Mariners uniform. You kind of hinted at how Harry Ford gotten worse every year, not being aggressive. A guy that is aggressively jumping up ranks because of his ability with the stick that he showed in 2024, which shocked a lot of people. A lot of people. Michael Arroyo is our 6th ranked here. Infielder, second base shortstop. He finished last year in Everett. He started out at Modesto and hit 279, 404 with a 500 slug and 904 OPS. And as you go up ranks, it might get a little bit harder. He said no. No, it won't. In the 60 games that he played in Everett, he hit better. He was better at Everett than he was in Modesto. 290, 397 with a 519 slug, a 916 OPS. Bro popped 23 homers last year. His previous career high, I mean, sure, it was 57 games in Modesto where he hit 2. But like going from 3 home runs in a season in 2023 to 23 the next season, bro was unbelievable with the stick. And that's why you find him in the top 100 for Pipeline and Baseball America, why he is jumping up these lists. Last year he was ranked 12th. He's starting conversations about like, you know, how is he has played himself into the conversation, like how does he fit in long term, as opposed to he was every single trade deadline, every single trade package, he was my guy to throw. He's like, he doesn't have a spot. This could be like a Howie Kendrick, a Josh Harrison type beat, where he's a small, compact middle infielder, but he's making an impact wherever he plays. And he definitely found himself playing into almost a top 5 prospect evaluation from us. And I mean, a lot of people, I think, are willing to put him up there as well for going to 2025.
Michael Arroyo answered a lot of questions in 2024 about who he was as a player, because you look at his previous years, like you said, 2023, he had 255, 403, 400, and 803 OPS, but only 3 homers. Those 23 home runs, what it says to me is that he's filling out like his frame at this point. He's a guy, again, he was 19 in 2024. Like there's still a lot of development for guys at that age, and if this is what Michael Arroyo has developed into, something that a lot of us didn't see coming, because up until last year he had been nothing special. Now again, he struck out 136 times last year, so that could be a problem, but at the same time, it's a guy that you can kind of dream on with Michael Arroyo, where he'll be come this time next year. Like we could legitimately, if he has another year like he did in 2024, we could legitimately be talking about Michael Arroyo as like a top 3 prospect for the Mariners if he does this again, if he goes to Arkansas or something like that. I'm really excited to see what his 2025 looks like. I don't know about his ability to stick at like shortstop, but I think second base is a good spot for him. If he does get a little bit too bulky, third base. But like you said earlier, there's a lot of players in the Mariners minor league system that make it difficult for a guy like Michael Arroyo, who is not going to be the best defender on the field, but his bat is important. Like, if you hit, you're gonna be on the field somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't know exactly where that's gonna be for Michael Arroyo. He'll play this entire year at just 20 years old, so there's plenty of time for the Mariners and him to figure that out. Moving on to the next player on our list, Joe. This is an interesting one because Johnny Farmelo comes in here for us at number 5. He makes the top 5 for the Mariners. There has been a lot of talk this offseason. His pedigree, his prospect pedigree has been on the rise the entire offseason, even though he suffered an ACL injury in 2024 and only played in 46 games. He had 264, 398, 421 with 4 home runs, 18 stolen bases, struck out 52 times, walked 36 times in 221 plate appearances. I struggled with Johnny Farmelo. I know a lot of people are ranking him as the number 3 prospect for the Mariners, and I personally could not bring myself to do it coming off of that injury, and frankly just haven't seen him enough. So this is why we had him at number 5. You and I were actually in a pretty similar boat there with where we both ranked Johnny Farmelo. So what do you think it is that's making him rise up so many boards, and why did you not rank him as high?
Something you said about Arroyo is like he answered a lot of questions. I think Farmelo answered questions, but then left people wanting more in a positive manner. They saw the potential kind of like fully be fleshed out in those 46 games of a very polished bat at, just age 19, going to be 20 this season, with plus speed and plus defense out in center field. Starting with that at your core as a player, I think is a fine set of 3 tools to play around with to start. Glove, speed, and like whether or not power's there. It's more like a contact bat, but like having 3 out of 5 tools to start at just age 20. I understand why there's hype, and there's potential that you can grow into the other 2 more so by filling out your frame. He's not fully, like, he's a kid at this point still, pretty much, as far as like, baseball players are concerned. So I get why the idea of dreaming on him so much so that he does enter those conversations for the top 3. I am just so hesitant because an ACL injury to a guy where his legs are his best tool to start, that could be very detrimental to his development and his progress that he will make. Yes, counterpoint, he's young. It was the best, it's not the right word, but it's the best time for him to have gotten an injury like that. Because he is so young, he will heal faster, he will heal better than if he had got that injury 6 years from now, right? Where that then completely probably derails his career. There's time for him to come back, which is why I couldn't put him inside the top 3. I need to see more. Love what you see out of those 46 games. You want to see him play a full, like 80 to 100 games, ramp back up in 2025, whether or not he'll be fully healthy enough to play that much, whether or not they ease him into it. But again, he's young. He's going to probably want to get out there and fight, and he's going to want to get out there and play as much ball as he can to show people like us that he is a top 3 prospect. If he is, that's amazing. But even at a top 5 at where he's at, that's nothing to, slouch at. He's a very, very good prospect for a very good reason, but I don't know if I'm willing to. It's like a risk aversion type thing by putting him 5 instead of 3. Whereas some of the guys ahead of him, I feel like there's a bit more foundation to stand on, and one that both legs have functional ACLs.
Damn. Yeah, I think there's a lot of talk about there's a lot of Kyle Lewis. You know what I mean? It's like
I guess
that is the thing. I think obviously Lewis's injury was worse. I think it was his ACL and his MCL. I just worry about that because Kyle Lewis I think had a bit more power than Johnny Farmelo. Johnny Farmelo still needs to grow into that. We've seen that happen before, and we saw what it did to Kyle Lewis's career.
Mm-hmm.
And with that being said, there have been rumors about Kyle Lewis's work ethic and I don't want to get too far into that, but Johnny Farmelo is a guy that if we rank him, I would be more than happy to rank him in the top 3 when we do this again in August.
Mm-hmm.
A guy that I think should be number 1.
Number 1 in your heart.
And he's number 1 in my heart. 80 grade human being, 80 grade smile, 80 grade personality. That is Lazaro Montes. Now, there have been some varying reports about Montes, and how, he's going to have to hit, which, yes, of course. But I personally think he can stick in right field.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that his defense got a lot better in like the second half of 2024 in Everett. So he moved up to Everett and he struggled when he first got there, but he picked it back up. In all, in Everett, he hit 260, 378, 427 with 8 home runs, 33 RBI. He struck out 69 nice times with 35 walks in 51 games. So the problem is he strikes out not an abundant amount. Like, it's not a crazy number. It's not 162 times like Type B did. And it was over 116 games, but it's there. He hit 21 home runs overall in 2024. I would assume that he starts next year in Everett again.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a good chance he can move to Arkansas relatively quickly. But again, only 51 games in Everett last year, and he struggled at first, turned it around, and became the guy that we've kind of always seen him. But his numbers are a little bit skewed because he struggled so much when he first got there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that means he's going to move up quickly, but I think that because of the player Lazaro Montes is, and honestly, I think what it seems like his work ethic is, I think there's a good chance he moves up to Arkansas by like June.
Interesting. I think they'll probably want to see him spend like 70% or 75% of the minor league season in Everett, just to make sure everything's there so that he doesn't like immediately go to Arkansas and then struggle, kind of a thing. Like, he'll need to be in a groove. If he it doesn't matter if he's sitting like 500, yeah, he'll be in Arkansas by June, kind of a vibe. Laz is an interesting one. Defense, I don't know if it doesn't matter to me. I don't think. I think the hit tool will be enough there, regardless if he's out in right field or if he's DHing, that he will find his way at some point on the major league roster. Not this year. Middle of next season could be like the earliest that I would say, where I'd be like, yeah, I feel confident in like his capabilities. You see what he can do in batting practice, like just like the definition of like a cage bomb. Obviously, it's on a field. He's a huge human being with a great work ethic and a great personality, and he's around some of the greatest like people to help him grow the best parts about him already. Julio, Randy, Victor. 3, maybe not the same exact skill set, not the same exact tools, but as far as personality and vibes are concerned, like doubling down on that and then just being like that charismatic energy, I think that will go a long way for having a guy that's easy to root for. And it doesn't seem like he himself will find like himself to be like lackadaisical in any sense. He's going to take it seriously, even if he is that like big jovial kind of person. The struggles in Everett, yes, the strikeouts, like it was bad to start, but he was able to turn it around. That inspires confidence that even in a rut, he can figure something out and change the narrative, or kind of flip it back to where it once was. I think the big thing for him is swing decisions. He does not have good like plate discipline, and that's going to be a big test. And that's why I think they'll want him to stay in Everett for more of the season than going to Arkansas, because you're going to see better pitching in Arkansas. If you're in Everett, it's not going to be as challenging, and you can work on that plate discipline better there than you could if you spent the majority of the season in Arkansas. So letting him develop a bit more there is kind of like how I view Laz's age 20 season kind of going in 2025.
Yeah, the comp obviously was Yordan Alvarez,
Sure,
which is just so unfair. But also the Mariners comp, and we've heard it a lot, is Carlos Peguero. And we know that Peguero had all the power in the world, but he had trouble hitting the baseball. And I hope that's not the case with Laz moving forward, but we'll just have to wait and see. A guy who doesn't have trouble hitting the baseball, Joe, at least not in 2024, was shortstop Felman Celestin, who comes in at number 3 for us. He was just 18 last year down in the Arizona Complex League. In 32 games, he hit 352, 431, 568, good for a 999 OPS. He hit 3 home runs, 27 RBIs, stole 5 bags, walked 18 times, and struck out 28 times. Felman, like you said earlier, is a guy that I think probably sticks at shortstop long term. Like, of all of the guys in this farm system, he's the one that I think will be the shortstop of the future. A guy that we haven't gotten to see a whole lot of. I really hope that this is finally the year. It feels like we've been talking about it forever, but this is because he had the hamstring injury in 23, I think it was, and then didn't really get going until later in the season for 2024. Injury concerns are real with him. He's had to have hamate bone surgery, etc. Like, yeah, there's definitely some concerns about Felnin and his injury history, but the talent is there. He's a guy that he's number 3 for a reason, and we could be talking about him as the number 1 prospect in a year's time because he is just that good of a player.
The ceiling is almost immeasurable for a guy like him with what he's shown. This is like a true, well-rounded, almost 5-tool prospect at the age of like 19 that you can get. By development's time, right? Like as time goes on, spend some time in Modesto this year, maybe by Everett. He could be like a top 10 prospect in all of baseball by season's end, and I wouldn't bat an eye. Just with what you're able to kind of dream on with a prospect like Felnin. Obviously, Colt Emerson's still there. Not saying that he's gonna kind of like slide down anyway, but like there's legit superstar upside with a player like Felnin and like his body of work and the tools that he's been able to flash. The comps immediately were like Francisco Lindor. Yeah, just the runner-up MVP to last year to Shohei Ohtani's 50-50 season. Just like, yeah, no, it's like super casual, by the way. Super casual, like one of the best shortstops of a generation. Maybe the best shortstop of our current generation kind of a situation. Yeah, super casual. Whether he sticks it short, I think it makes sense for him to, but there's also comps that like he could go out and play center. I don't know whether or not that makes sense for Julio's timeline, doesn't matter. But the injury concern is definitely there. It's less than I think with Farmelo because the injuries haven't been as severe, in my opinion. But yeah, Felnin at 3, I think just makes sense. I think that's where he'll find himself when like Pipeline does come out with theirs as well, personally. But there's 2 guys ahead of him, and they're the consistent 1-2. They're the 1-2 punch at the top of the list for good reason. They have not just the pedigree of like what their ceiling could be, but they've been, one's more so been healthy on the field. The other has just shown like potential top 5 prospect in all of baseball potential. But the number 2 here, Cole Young, he'll be in the big sometime in 2025 pretty safely. They're not really like hiding the fact that they hope second base they figure something out so Dylan Moore doesn't have to stay there long term for the entire season, that he can more so be a roamer. That answer has to be Cole Young. Like, I think they're hoping that he starts out hot in spring, goes to AAA, and is just continuing to hit well, continuing to level up his maturity, and still be a not like necessarily glove first, but a glove forward player at either second or short. If he's on the big league club, he'll be at second. But Cole Young, he's been a top prospect of this Mariners system ever since he got drafted. He's there for a reason. He's a great prospect. He's got a bunch of tools that you like to see. He's the number 2 because only because Colt Emerson is that much better. But Cole Young, he's an exciting player to watch specifically for 2025.
He controls the zone really well, which obviously is something the Mariners are they harp on that quite a bit. He walked 67 times, struck out 87 times in 124 games, 552 plate appearances. He hit 271, 369, 390, good for a 759 OPS. So the OPS went down a little bit. Again, he was playing in Dickie Stevens, a hard ballpark to hit in. He hit 9 home runs, a couple triples with 25 doubles as well. I think that him moving up to AAA, up to Tacoma, it's going to be a big move for him, and it's one that I think is going to do numbers for him as well. Like, he's going to look really good in Tacoma because it is a hitter's haven, and I think that the Tacoma infield, we talked about this in a recent podcast, is going to be so much fun. Like, you got Ben Williamson, Cole Young, potentially Ryan Bliss, and then Tyler Locklear over at first base.
Yeah,
that's a really fun infield.
That's probably a starting infield for like the Miami Marlins. Maybe not. Maybe that's a bit egregious with like Connor Norby and Xavier Edwards, but still, there's the potential that I might take those 4 over a current major league roster's 4 infielders. But
yeah, I think that you said it best. There's a really good chance you see him this year because second base has been left wide open. Ryan Bliss, of course, still has the pedigree where he is probably the next guy up, but Cole Young is probably the long-term answer. He has done it at every step of the way. He has not really faltered at any level. And I think because of that, yeah, his consistency. My mom thinks he looks like Tom Cruise. She
Interesting.
says that all the time.
Even with the
So
mustache now?
no, not well. Top Gun, Tom Cruise, maybe.
Maybe.
Mm.
Hmm.
But yeah, so my mom actually knows who Cole Young is. So I
That's
guess do
there's
with that as you will. That's
there's a
important.
there's a reason why he's the second ranked prospect. When
Fulton's
you
mom knows it.
exactly. Something I want to say really quick before we talk about Emerson. Young didn't get a lot of time in Everett. Like he just straight up started Arkansas 2024. He spent half of his season, under half of his season in 2023 in high A. And then they just said, "Hey, have fun in Arkansas." Like I think that's a telltale sign of where they think he is specifically, that he didn't need more time in Everett. Whereas like someone were like with Laz, like this timeline to me looks like if Laz took this jump to Arkansas, like Cole Young did last year, I wouldn't be as confident as for Laz to have a similar level of success. Yes, like you said, OPS did go down. The hitting stats weren't exactly as high as they were in Modesto and Everett, but I think that goes to show like where they thought he was as an overall player, that he wouldn't completely flounder by not getting a little bit more time in high A.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It was an aggressive move. It was, but he has not struggled at any level. And I think that with the Mariners, I know last year when we did this, we were shocked when we heard that he was going to go right up to Double A, but he was great at Double A, and so that's something like it is a testament to the Mariners development system. It's a testament to Cole Young as a player and as a person, and just how hard he works to be better every single day. I think that there's a good chance that, man. So back in the day, right? It was Kyle Seager and Dustin Ackley were like the 1-2, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how it's felt with Cole Young and Colt Emerson.
Stop. I don't want to
Nah.
make one or the other. They're both going to be Kyle Seager.
Yes, but that's how it's felt. Ackley got there first, but Seager was the much better player. And there have been comps made specifically by the Locked On guys.
That Cole Young is like Dustin Ackley and Colt Emerson's like
No,
Kyle Seager?
that not about Cole Young, just specifically about Colt Emerson.
Mm,
That his floor might be Kyle Seager, and
yeah,
his ceiling is Corey Seager. I think that's what the Locked On guys said.
that's fair.
And I don't disagree with that. I think that's a very hefty. I mean, you're talking about the best third baseman in team history. Like that's a very hefty comp, but I don't think it's totally unfounded.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Colt Emerson, God, Colt Emerson had some injury problems in 2024. He played in 70 games between rookie ball, A ball, and high A.
Yeah.
He hit 263, 393, 376, good for an OPS of 769 with 4 homers. He struck out 58 times, walked 50 times. The Arizona Fall League, he played in 13 games, hit 370, 436, 537. I believe, was it him or Young that had to leave because they had like wrist discomfort?
That was Young. But then
Young?
Emerson,
Okay.
I think, still ended up pulling out early of the fall league anyways. Or like he just like stopped. I don't think he played like the full whatever. But yeah, the thing with Emerson for me in 2024, because you look at what he did right out of being drafted in 2023, had an OPS of over 1,000 in 24 games. He could never get going. He could never be consistently on the field with whatever. I don't remember specifically the injuries that plagued him last year. I feel like one was a wrist.
I feel like he also like fractured his foot at some point or something. I don't know.
Regardless, his time in Modesto is much better than his time in Everett. And I think a lot of that has to do with him not being able to stay consistently on the field. I think if he has a fully healthy 2025, he's going to start in Everett. He might finish in Arkansas. But if it's a fully healthy 2025 and it's the entirety in Everett, I'm not going to be upset. But I have full confidence that you'll see numbers closer to his debut in 2023, where he does not make outs. Like he is hitting over 300. He is consistently hitting the ball all over the field. The power hasn't fully been there as far as like numbers are concerned, but I know his EVs are pretty decent. I think the thing that's nice about spring training is there's StatCast in Peoria. I'm excited whenever Colt Emerson goes up just to see what the EVs might be, because if they're looking good in spring, I think he's looking towards a very healthy 2025 where he will put up the offensive numbers that have warranted his spot as the undisputed number one prospect in the Mariners system. It's not just like this ceiling or floor that you're dreaming on. There's tangible data from that 2023 beginning where in the like Mariners rookie ball, whatever, in the complex league, he hit over 500. His OPS was near 1500, right? Like this is as good of a bat tool that you'll see in the Mariners prospect system. And he's 19, going to be 20 at the end of July. He is leagues ahead of many players in this system as far as what his potential can be, and that's why he's the number one prospect, and that's why he will continue to be the number one prospect until things go south for him. But I don't anticipate that, in the way that he's talked about by many people around the organization, or even himself having interviews with Connor on the Couch GM. Like, there's a body of work there that shows that he's got a very high work ethic, which even if he doesn't fully reach his potential of a high ceiling, say it is Corey Seager, that floor is almost like very realistic in the sense of like who he is, what it seems like on the field and off the field.
There's a chance that he becomes the number one prospect in baseball, like by the end of this year. There have been talks because guys are going to graduate. Of course, Roman Anthony, I think, is the number one prospect right now.
Yep.
He probably graduates this year.
Roki, but like,
oh, right.
You know,
right. True. Right. Yeah. So I think that there's a real chance. Where was he ranked?
He's 20th.
20th. Yeah. So I think that there's a real chance he does make it into the top 10 by the end of this year in all of baseball. And I think that 2025 is the year that people start to take notice of who Colt Emerson is. Because like you said, there's been a lot of start, stop for him over the start of his career. 2025 is the year that I think it kind of all takes off for him. And with that being said, the Mariners are going to be able to add some guys to this list. We'll probably be talking about 2 new guys added to this list that were drafted in the 2025 draft when we do this again in August, and potentially, now unlikely, but potentially a new number one. What do you think? Do you think it's possible that the Mariners draft a new number one prospect with the 3rd pick?
No, but maybe. Like I don't hate the idea if it's like Laviette or if it's Jamie Arnold at 3. However, it kind of shakes out at this point, but the 3, the 35, and the 57, I think is what they have. It's like been announced. All 3 of those guys could end up in the top 30. Guaranteed 2 will. But the 57, I think that's where Ben Williamson was taken back in 2023. And he was plugged straight into the top 30, I think, as well. It was more not as high as he is now. But yeah, there's the farm system that already has the most top 100 prospects in all of baseball is going to get better with this draft class. And they're going to continue to develop. And there's not going to be that many graduations where you're going to see the farm system kind of fall off. They're in a good spot with the draft and develop. It's just about putting it all on the field and getting things to kind of coincide and work together as a unit, whether it's trading some of these guys or if it's having them graduate and be on your major league roster. Like some of these guys that we ranked, they're probably not going to be here by midseason, like you mentioned, just as the nature of the game kind of works. Aiden Smith, Brody Hopkins, fallen soldiers to the Randy Arozarena trade. Aiden Smith probably would be in the top 10. I feel like both of them could have a legitimate shot. I know Brody. I don't know how much Brody Hopkins has developed, but Aiden Smith is a guy that has developed a ton. And there's like it all goes wrong situation. Like Randy, he's traded by midseason because the Mariners are out of it, and Aiden Smith's the top like 50 prospect in all of baseball kind of situation. It's always interesting with prospects, but I like where the Mariners prospect system is at currently. There's some decisions to be made about where certain guys are ranked, and this is not there are many more people who are more well informed about prospects in general, that if you're like, well, we don't like this guy here, awesome, there's plenty of other lists and other, I guess, data points that you can be like, yeah, I like where this one's at, and that's okay. This is kind of where we kind of look at these guys and we're saying like, this is where we think they kind of land.
Yeah. Listen, we get it, Daydara. We didn't rank Victor Labrada. Okay. But I thought about it for what it's worth. But that's going to do it from us here on episode 168 of the Hit It Here podcast. Let us know if you agree or disagree with some of our rankings, and go Mariners.